The specter of a Sino-Iranian alliance is looming large, casting a long shadow over the global order. As the world's attention pivots to the east, the growing partnership between China and Iran is raising urgent questions about the future of international power dynamics. In the volatile landscape of international politics, the question is urgent. Will China, the rising superpower, align with Iran against Israel and the United States? The stakes are enormous, not just for the countries directly involved, but for the entire world. Such an alliance could shift the balance of power, upending decades of established relationships and alliances. This isn't just speculation. Recent strategic realignments and high-level meetings suggest a new axis could be forming, one that has the potential to redraw the geopolitical map. Analysts point to a series of agreements, joint military exercises and economic deals as evidence that this partnership is moving beyond rhetoric and into reality. The implications are profound. If China and Iran deepen their cooperation, it could create a formidable bloc capable of challenging Western influence, especially in regions where the US and its allies have long held sway. An alliance between China's industrial might and Iran's regional influence would challenge American dominance in a region critical to global energy security. The Middle East, already a powder keg, could become the stage for a new era of great power competition, with energy resources and trade routes at the heart of the struggle. For Iran, isolated by years of crippling sanctions and diplomatic pressure, China offers more than just an economic lifeline. Beijing provides Tehran with access to global markets, advanced technology, and a powerful diplomatic shield at the United Nations and beyond. For China, Iran is a key node in its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, offering a strategic foothold in the Middle East. By investing in Iranian infrastructure and energy, China secures vital resources and expands its influence along critical trade corridors. The synergy between these two nations is undeniable, but questions remain. How far is Beijing willing to go to support Tehran's ambitions, especially if it means risking confrontation with the West? Will economic interests outweigh the risks of deeper entanglement in Middle Eastern conflicts? The world is watching closely. Decisions made in Beijing could determine whether the Middle East finds a new equilibrium or descends into wider conflict. Every move is scrutinized by diplomats, analysts, and ordinary citizens alike, all aware that the consequences could be far-reaching. As the global chessboard shifts, this is the central drama of our time, a high-stakes contest that will shape the future of international relations for years to come. To truly understand the gravity of the current situation, we need to look back at the events that unfolded just last month during what is now known as the 12-Day War. This brief but intense conflict sent shockwaves through the international community and marked a turning point in Middle Eastern geopolitics. In June 2025, the long-standing shadow war between Israel and Iran erupted into open conflict. For years, both nations had relied on proxies and covert operations, but suddenly, they abandoned these tactics and launched direct attacks on each other's territories. The world watched in alarm as missiles streaked across the skies and cities braced for impact. Israel responded with Operation Rising Lion, a campaign that showcased its advanced military capabilities. Israeli fighter jets struck deep into Iranian territory, targeting military installations and suspected nuclear facilities. The precision and speed of these attacks demonstrated Israel's technological edge and its willingness to act decisively when threatened. The United States, under President Trump's leadership, initially offered diplomatic support, but as the conflict escalated and the risk of nuclear escalation grew, the U.S. shifted its stance. American bombers and cruise missiles joined the fray, striking Iranian nuclear sites and sending a clear message about U.S. resolve. The Pentagon's involvement marked a significant escalation, drawing global attention and concern. Faced with overwhelming force and mounting casualties, Tehran was compelled to reconsider its position. Intense negotiations followed, with diplomats from around the world racing to broker a ceasefire. After days of tense talks in Geneva, a fragile agreement was reached, halting the fighting but leaving many issues unresolved. The ceasefire brought a temporary calm, but the situation on the ground remained volatile. Military patrols monitored tense borders, while sporadic violations and protests in both countries signaled that true peace was still out of reach. Drone surveillance and intelligence gathering continued as both sides prepared for the possibility of renewed hostilities. For Israel, the war was a costly victory. The nation mourned its losses, with funerals for fallen soldiers and civilians alike. Bomb shelters became a grim necessity, and the process of rebuilding damaged infrastructure began. The conflict exposed vulnerabilities in Israel's defenses, prompting urgent calls for reform and greater vigilance. For Iran, the war was a sobering lesson in the limits of its power. The damage to military assets and the loss of life were significant. Iranian leaders, facing internal dissent and economic strain, realized the urgent need for stronger alliances and a reassessment of their regional strategy. For the United States, the conflict reaffirmed its role as the region's primary power broker. However, the growing influence of China, which sought to mediate and expand its presence, signaled a new era of great power competition in the Middle East. The balance of power was shifting, and old certainties were being challenged. In the aftermath, the strategic calculus for all parties was fundamentally altered. Alliances shifted, new partnerships emerged, and the region entered a period of uncertainty. The war's legacy continues to shape decisions and policies as leaders weigh the risks of future conflict against the hope for lasting peace. These dramatic events have set the stage for today's high-stakes diplomacy, where the choices made now will determine the future of the Middle East and the world. During the 12-day war, China played a careful diplomatic game. Publicly, Beijing called for restraint and criticized Israeli and U.S. actions, appealing to the global South. Privately, China's actions were restrained, focused on protecting its economic interests, especially energy imports from the Middle East. China offered to mediate, but real leverage remained with the U.S. After the ceasefire, China hosted high-level meetings with Russia and Iran, signaling growing alignment against the U.S.-led order. Beijing's dual approach, peacemaker to the world but quietly strengthening ties with Iran. This calculated ambiguity keeps China's options open as it weighs deeper involvement. The world watches to see if China will remain cautious or become a more assertive player. Western capitals worry about how China could covertly support Iran. Iran seeks advanced Chinese weaponry and technology, possibly through secret channels. China could provide satellite imagery, boosting Iran's missile accuracy and targeting. Economic leverage is another tool. China could restrict rare earth exports, crippling Israel's defense systems. Cyber cooperation is a further risk, with China potentially enhancing Iran's offensive capabilities. These forms of covert aid are deniable, diffuse, and deeply destabilizing. For Beijing, a deeper alliance with Iran is a double-edged sword. Arming Iran could trigger a regional arms race, destabilizing the Middle East and threatening China's economic interests. It risks alienating the EU and Gulf Arab states, key partners for trade and energy. Siding with Iran could push these nations closer to the US and damage China's global ambitions. Yet withholding support could undermine China's credibility as a leader of the global South. Beijing must weigh the strategic prize of an Iran alliance against potential economic fallout. The choice will shape not just the Middle East, but China's role as a global power. The world awaits Beijing's decision. The Middle East is now a critical front in the US-China rivalry. The US remains the dominant military and diplomatic force as seen in its decisive intervention and ongoing alliance building. China, meanwhile, is expanding its influence through coalitions like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but faces internal divisions. The US is shoring up alliances in the Indo-Pacific and re-evaluating its Taiwan policy, while China increases military pressure in the region. These moves are part of a global chess match, with every region a square on the board. China's efforts to build an anti-US bloc face hurdles. Alliances lack deep-rooted trust. The Middle East is now the most combustible stage in this contest for global influence. Recent high-level meetings in Beijing have pulled back the curtain on China's evolving ambitions in the Middle East. These summits, marked by carefully choreographed gestures and intense negotiations, are more than just diplomatic formalities. They are windows into a shifting global order. As Chinese and Iranian officials gather in the heart of Beijing, every handshake and every word exchanged carries weight far beyond the meeting room. In the aftermath of recent conflict, Iranian officials arrived in Beijing with a sense of urgency, seeking not only economic relief but also advanced technology and military support to rebuild and strengthen their position. Their requests reflect Iran's growing dependence on external partners to weather international pressure and sanctions. China, recognizing this vulnerability, uses it as powerful leverage. In exchange for its support, Beijing demands privileged access to Iran's vast energy resources and lucrative infrastructure projects, ensuring its own economic security while deepening its influence in the region. But China's strategy goes further. Beijing is likely urging Iran to exercise restraint, aiming to prevent any escalation that could entangle China in direct conflict or disrupt its global interests. This delicate balancing act highlights China's desire to expand its reach without becoming mired in regional instability. The symbolism on display is unmistakable. By hosting these talks and excluding the US, China is sending a clear message. It intends to shape the future of the Middle East on its own terms, challenging American dominance in the region. While the full details of these agreements remain shrouded in secrecy, the world is watching closely for clues. Signs could include the arrival of advanced Chinese technology in Iran, a boost in Iranian cyber capabilities, or even diplomatic protection for Tehran at the United Nations. Each of these developments will offer insight into whether the partnership between China and Iran is evolving into a more assertive and potentially more dangerous phase, with consequences that could ripple far beyond their borders. The stakes in this high-stakes diplomatic game are enormous. The choices made in these rooms could reshape alliances, redraw economic maps, and spark new rivalries on the world stage. As the world holds its breath, the next moves by China and Iran will help define not just the future of the Middle East, but the direction of global power itself. The future of the Middle East hangs in the balance. If the US-brokered ceasefire holds, China may stick to economic and diplomatic support, avoiding military entanglement. But a collapse could see China pressured to intervene, risking a global proxy war. The broader US-China rivalry will shape the region's fate. Escalation could turn the Middle East into a second front. Peace depends on choices made in Washington, Jerusalem, Tehran, and Beijing. The risk of miscalculation is immense. A single incident could trigger catastrophe. The region's future depends on whether leaders can step back from the brink. The stakes could not be higher, for the Middle East and for the world.